again, we just did an episode on like when to quit.
Yeah.
This is like, you want to grow in your career at your company, but like you're figuring out like, is what I'm doing going to work? And some of the like red flags that if you start seeing, you're like, oh yeah, definitely getting taken advantage of. What are you smiling about?
Just your Minnesota accent.
Red flags?
It's so funny.
The flag?
Yeah.
Bag? Hello? Milk?
That's disgusting.
Welcome back, everyone, to Per My Last Email, the show where we give you the hot takes and tactics to accelerate your career, and we have the most fun doing it along the way with you all. Thanks for tuning in. And I'm Kyle. I'm the co-host.
And I'm Kaila. I'm also the co-host.
And you might have noticed we upgraded our office.
It's true. We're looking pretty slick in
here. The money's rolling in.
Yep.
Sponsorships are through the roof, and it was time to upgrade.
Yep, we did.
The most messed up part about this is our fake office here in the Per My Last Email studio is 100 times nicer than my actual office at Morning Brew.
Yeah, because my actual office at Morning Brew is a desk in a corner.
This is all an illusion, folks. This is not how Morning Brew actually operates.
I think we have to bring back cubicles. I love this. This is sick.
We should bring back cubicles, or we should just start working here permanently.
I'm not opposed.
Our actual job. This
is a very cozy seat.
It's very cozy. We're not talking about cubicles, though. No. That's such hard-hitting content. We're not even ready for that. What we're going to be talking about today is, are you being taken advantage of at your job?
Hard-hitting content.
A hard-hitting content. Yeah. And like, I think a very applicable topic to a lot of people, because we've all been in a situation where we're like, I'm working really hard and like, am I actually going to see a reward out of this? Or like, am I being exploited?
Yep.
And so, Kaila,
yep.
When do you feel like you were being most taken advantage of at work? Any job you've had where you're like, yeah, this is a problem?
Yeah, I mean, this is tough because the answer,
you're like 24/7 workers' rights.
Unionized. No, the time that I felt like I was the most taken advantage of was probably my first job.
Okay.
But I feel a little icky saying that because I was paid sufficiently for it.
Yeah.
But basically, when you're working in finance, the expectation is you're going to be, working long hours and, don't shake your head like that. You're going to be working long hours and you're going to be doing a lot of grunt work, especially at the beginning of your career, but it's going to pay off because you're going to get paid quite a lot. And when I was working in equity research, I was doing a lot of grunt work. I remember just like putting my hair up into like the highest, tightest ponytail I could and just like
game face on,
putting like dubstep in my ears and like literally data entrying, which probably isn't even like a thing anymore with all these technology, but basically like looking at a PDF and as fast as I can, putting those numbers into a spreadsheet.
You've had 800 milligrams of caffeine. You're shaking.
We had these caffeine pills called Vivarin. Literally, it was Vivarin and aspirin was available at the front desk.
I'm sure some Adderall was involved. Not by you personally.
Not by me personally.
I've heard stories of that industry.
But you're also compensated. So I feel silly being like, oh, I was taken advantage of. But I do feel like, that industry is one that relies on a lot of low level, high paid work.
Yeah.
That is just like grinding.
But okay, those medical statements were not advised by the FDA, so don't necessarily follow Kaila's
no, do not do that
plan.
At all.
Here's my problem with this is you're not being taken advantage of in finance. You're making so much money. Right. You know what you're getting into. On a previous episode, you were talking about interns partying in the Hamptons. I'm like, which part of this is the part where you're being exploited? Like, you're making amazing money right out of school. I did AmeriCorps. I did just as much work as you did, and I made 1/10 of the money.
Yeah.
So, not to try to one up you on exploitation, but if anyone's being exploited, it was me in that job.
I do agree.
Yeah.
And I think what's interesting is the way that both industries get away with it is different.
Yeah.
Both have kind of a different carrot, but the outcome is the same, right?
Talk to me about your carrot.
My carrot was money, right? We had, when I was my first job, I wasn't making people I wasn't making as much as people are making now, but if you're a entry level first year analyst at a big bulge bracket bank, you're making six figures, at least $100,000 as your base salary.
Out of school, and then your bonus is probably 30% of that.
Yeah,
you might be walking away with $130K at the age of 22 with a crippling Adderall addiction, but
kids
besides
should
that,
not have that much money. Should not have access to that amount. It's crazy.
And so it's really interesting, like there's the money part, which you could, we'll talk about, is that exploitation or not. On the nonprofit side, I started my career in AmeriCorps. It's a different form of exploitation. And for the record, like, I absolutely loved what I did. I would not actually say I was exploited in that role because I knew what I was signing up for. It was one of the most rewarding jobs. I learned a ton. I'm really proud of the work I did. But how nonprofits or even some other for-profit companies do find a way to come right up to that edge of exploitation. It's all about purpose-driven work. And so I saw a ton of people that worked at a nonprofit for years and years and years. I just did 2 years, where they were making, I'm not even kidding, 3 or 4 times less than what they could have been making for the same exact job at a for-profit company. And every time they would say, hey, like, I'm paid under market. I want to make some more money. It was kind of this like twisting of, well, don't you care about the mission? Like, if you really cared about the kids, don't you want all of the money that comes into the organization to go back to this service? And I saw the most burnout and the most like toxic work environments in some of the nonprofits I interacted with or had friends working at because of that. And using purpose to almost obfuscate, like giving you any sort of compensation, any sort of like advanced PTO, any sort of career advancement, because like, don't you care about the kids? What are you supposed to say when kids get involved? Like, that's a tough situation to be in.
Of course. Yeah, that is really tough. And it basically is a justification. Both are forms of justification for working you harder than you should be working.
Yeah.
It's very interesting.
And like, okay, let's get into like the harder than you should be working. And I think let's first set the scene because there's a lot of nuance involved in this conversation. Yeah. So set the scene for folks on like how we got to where we're at now with this like hustle culture or why we're even having the conversation about being taken advantage of at work.
Yeah, I mean, if you can go back 100 years and think.
Kayla's a historian.
It started
little known fact.
In 1923.
In the year 0 BC.
0 BC. Yes, it's true. But work in the olden days was a lot less fuzzy than it is now. You were working if you worked at a factory, you have to put out 500 widgets a day, and then you're done.
Yeah.
Whatever. Once we started getting more into this like quote unquote white collar working jobs got a little bit more fuzzy. It was a manufacturer, a factory worker was replaced with a consultant or a designer. And as you made that transition, the actual job responsibilities got fuzzier.
Yep.
They got less clear. It's not 500 widgets. It's like work 8 hours towards a campaign that you're working on for your ad client.
Yeah, it kind of becomes like, how hard are you grinding? It's like this, like, how am I supposed to actually like put a metric to that?
Yeah. And so there was this great BBC article that basically outlined this shift. And one of the things they talked about is there was this study done of like 1927 to 1932. It was some like electrical working factory.
Yeah.
And when the supervisors would leave or turn their backs, anyone that was working faster than the rest of the team would get binged. What do you think bings are?
Well, I did read the article. By read, I mean I looked at the headline. But I remember those are the Hawthorne studies, and binging would basically be workers like punching each other, saying, we're all in this together, and if you start working faster, that's going to be the new expectation.
Yeah.
So bring it down a bit. Like, we're not getting paid for this.
Yeah. So that is obviously not the situation right now.
I'm punching many people at Morning Brew.
It's so true. Yeah. Kyle and I actually punch each other in the arm daily.
Yeah. Stop working so hard.
We're binging. So then what happened is as these jobs got fuzzier, companies leaned in a little bit more, and they leaned in more towards the company engagement, the purpose-driven mentalities, trying to boost productivity by expecting and rewarding those that went quote unquote above and beyond the traditional 9 to 5. And if you are seeing that the people that are working above and beyond are the ones that are getting promoted and the ones that are getting rewarded, of course that's going to be, your tactic as well.
Yeah, there's two really important important things I want to highlight here. The first is, in the past, this Hawthorne study from like the 1920s, we did have a much more unionized workforce. And so there was this version of workplaces where like workers were working together. It didn't feel like you were working against each other. And so you could have some of these solidarity movements where it's like, hey, like we're not getting paid enough to do 600 widgets. We're only getting paid for 500. So stop trying to get 600. Like they stuck together and they had more bargaining power as a collective. The second thing that I think is really important, which you said, is previous roles, or if you are lucky enough maybe to be in a role where your inputs are directly tied to an output, it's very clear to see like, look, I did X, it made the company this much money, so I should be making this much money right under that. Now, if it is fuzzier, it's really hard to articulate sometimes your value. And so the only thing you have to like prove you're a good worker is like, I'm working hard, I'm showing up early, and that's where I think you get a lot of this burnout and you get a feeling of like, I'm working hard, but I'm not being rewarded for it. And you get on this never-ending hamster wheel of hustle.
Yeah, I love that. And we don't agree often, so this is quite
we should get a little hamster wheel, the never-ending hamster wheel of hustle.
Perfect. That could be, the new edition. But I do think like you're seeing, you saw a lot of this, and we've talked about this in the past, this like big tech kind of embracing the like, we're a family, and like kind of leaning almost towards those nonprofit mentalities that like we're purpose driven, like we're revolutionizing the world. And like we've always made fun of these like lofty ass missions that these random tech companies, it's like, you're not revolutionizing the world, you're like, you've created Tinder. You know? But
I mean, Meta's like, we're here to globally connect everyone. It's like, you sell ads. I mean, like you're doing great at that, but like, come on, drop the BS. Like
exactly. But it's using that same, like, this is a mission, this is that purpose to justify asking employees to do more. And now obviously that's shifted. This was more like the middle of like the 2010s. Now it's kind of like if you work at a big tech, it's like rest, invest, and whatever. We could talk about that later. But I do think that was marked like a very big shift in how we viewed our workplace, especially as our compensation and our identity became increasingly tied to how much we were quote unquote grinding at the office.
And I think an outcome of this now, I'm going to use a word that everyone is very sick of. Am I not going to use it? No, I'm still going to use it. Quiet quitting. I think this was like a reaction to burnout culture, to feeling like I'm working so hard, I'm not making any more money. Like, why am I going above and beyond if I'm not going to be rewarded for it? And so this quiet quitting, which basically was like people doing exactly what their job description told them to do and no more. And employers didn't like that. What's your take on quiet quitting? And like, do you think we're still in that era of quiet quitting now?
Yeah. So quiet quitting is so interesting because I was so sick of hearing this term.
Honestly, it's a great term. Whoever coined that, well done.
Good job.
Yeah.
Obviously, we didn't look it up. We
do zero research for this podcast.
We did research Binging.
Yeah, that's true.
So, no, I think quiet quitting is so interesting because I think people take it to mean exactly what they want to get upset about.
Yes.
Like, I would love for us to define what we mean by quiet quitting in order to have this discussion, because I think it can mean a lot of different things.
Let me define it. And you might not agree with this, but McKinsey came out with this study where they looked at quiet quitting. And I think their definition of quiet quitting was really effective, which was basically someone that is like open to quitting, but they're not actively looking for a new job after 3 years. And they had this, we'll throw up this chart. So if you're not on YouTube, go check it out on YouTube. I'll describe it the best I can, but they define this quiet quitting group as wanted to move, but did not move.
For 3 years?
For 3 years, yes. And that was their group that they said, like, these are the quiet quitters. And I'm sorry, this is my take.
Okay.
If you are in a role for 3 years and you want to quit, but you don't move, that's 1,000 days. Like, you can't be mad at your employer at that point. Like, you have to put some action into this. And so, like, I feel like if you're being taken advantage of, or you sense you are, like, figure out how to get around that, or like go to a different job. But like, sitting and complaining for 1,000 days cannot be healthy.
Yeah. So if this is the definition of quiet quitting, this sucks. But also quiet quitting, like in this case, is defined as like wanting to leave a job, but not leaving for 3 years.
Yeah.
That doesn't necessarily define their actions. It just means they want to leave. It doesn't necessarily mean, if I'm interpreting what you just said correctly, that they're like slacking off intentionally, or, you know, the way that I've heard it is there's two different ways. The first one is you just are doing exactly what is expected of you. You're not going above and beyond.
Yeah.
If that's a definition of quiet quitting, I think that's stupid, right? You're just doing your job. And like, that's not quiet quitting. That's just doing your job.
But do you think if you're just doing your job, then the expectation to advance in your career or like grow in your career, like if you're just doing your job, you're going to stay having that job.
Yeah.
And like, I just feel like you're not being exploited. You're doing the bare minimum.
Yeah.
You're getting paid what they told you to pay. But I feel like some people then are like, I'm doing the bare minimum and I want to get promoted.
Yeah.
And that's where I think there's some tension around like, okay, then you're going to have to do a little more, prove to your employer that you're ready for a promotion.
And we'll be right back after this. Okay, back to the show.
Yeah, I want to like table that for a second because I think that's a really, really interesting thing. Like, do you have to go above and beyond in order to get that promotion?
Yeah.
And do you have to kind of like do the work of the next job before you get promoted? But to go back to quiet quitting really quickly, I think like, I don't think that the people that are quiet quitting are expecting to get promoted. I think that the people that are quiet quitting are just like, I'm going to hold really strict boundaries with my employer and my work.
Yeah.
And I'm expecting to not get fired because of that. What I think the backlash is to this term quiet quitting, if that's the definition, is people being like, they should be fired. Like, I can't believe they're just doing their job as expected and as outlined by their job description. That I think is stupid.
Yeah. I mean, my only like issue with that perspective is I think when you hire someone for a role, you're not only hiring them for that role, but you are theoretically like hiring them for the potential to grow inside your organization. And so, you know, if someone asked me like, hey, you're going to come into this company, here's the job we want you to do, but here's how you're going to grow in your role. And I was like, I'm super excited about that. And then I only did what that JD said. And I was like really clear. I'm not taking any additional responsibilities until you pay me more, until you like give me a new title. I personally would say I have that backwards where like you have to prove that you are ready to go to the next level before you get to the next level. And I think that's where people feel like I'm being taken advantage of because I'm doing exactly what they said I'm going to do and I'm not getting promoted. It's not fired or promoted. There's fire, there's stasis, and there's promotion. And if you do exactly what you're supposed to do on your JD, nothing more, you're really strict with boundaries, that's great. That might be what you're choosing, but you're choosing stasis.
Yeah. No, I agree with that. What I think becomes a little bit more concerning in terms of the quiet quitting trend is the second definition, which is I'm just doing enough to not get fired.
Yeah.
And that's where I think quiet quitting becomes more of like an actual issue for employers because you're doing less than what you have to do. You're doing the bare minimum.
Yeah.
And that's going to impact your team. That's going to impact, you know, the work that you're doing, obviously your manager, the whole company potentially. That's where I'm like, okay, I understand the backlash of quiet quitting.
Yeah. So let's hone in on this idea of, you know, am I being taken advantage of at work and reframing that? What comes first, the promotion or the responsibilities? Because I've heard this so many times. We've talked to our colleagues about it. I was just on a panel this morning. Someone literally said like, how do I know if I'm ready for promotion? Do I take on more responsibilities or will someone come and promote me and then I get more? And that's where I feel like people feel like they're being exploited is when they're doing more and no promotion comes. And they're like, how long do I have to do this before I get promoted? And if you do it long enough, then like you are probably being exploited. So what comes first? Promotion or responsibilities?
I think it depends.
Did you work for McKinsey before? You hit me with the consultant answer.
I'm sorry, but I think there's a difference in expectation setting between you and your manager or you and your team. If you're being told you have to do more in order to be eligible for this promotion and then the promotion never comes, that's really, really concerning. So I think it just depends on the communication that you're having with your boss. What do you think?
Well, so I think you're not being taken advantage of if you're working hard or harder than maybe the expectation is. You're being taken advantage of when that hard work is not rewarded. So I do think probably, unless you have like an incredible manager, an incredible company that's like, we're going to promote you because we just trust you so much, you're going to have to prove to them you can go to the next level and work a little harder. But I would have a cutoff date of like, okay, I'm going to do this for like 3 months. if I'm not getting any sort of positive feedback, if I'm not getting a compensation increase, if I'm not getting a promotion, then I'm moving into exploitation territory. So my best tactic for people is like, if you're thinking about, I really want a promotion, but I don't want to be taken advantage of, have a conversation with your manager and lay that out. I want this job and I want to get there in 6 months. And here's what I'm willing to do to prove I'm ready for that role. Do you co-sign that?
Yeah.
And if they do, you have a 6-month runway. You do everything you said they're going to do. If they don't give you the promotion, they're probably exploiting you.
Yeah.
And if they do, like, that's a great thing. Now you've established, like, okay, I know how to get promoted at this company, and you can rinse and repeat, and now you're CEO of the company.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
You're welcome.
Sick.
Yes.
No, I mean, I think that's really interesting. So would you say that let's say you're like working for 3 months, you've just done all of those great things that you just outlined.
Yeah.
And you don't get promoted. There's some excuse.
Yeah.
Do you then go into quiet quitting era?
I would go into actively looking for another role. I again, my problem with one definition of quiet quitting is like, I think if you're sitting and complaining about your workplace, even if you're right, it just doesn't seem like a good way to spend the precious amount of time we have on Earth.
Yeah, I love to complain. I don't know.
And like, do you really want to go into an organization where like you hate it and like all of your conversations are about how miserable you are for 3 years? Like, no, get out of that. And like, I think tying your self-worth not to what your like employer thinks about you, but like kind of what you know deep inside, not to make this very philosophical, like get out then if, you know, you're feeling like you're being taken advantage of. But I think the worst situation you can find yourself in is a role that you don't feel like has growth, that you are feeling like you're being exploited, but you're not doing anything about it.
Yeah. So would you say that your definition of quiet quitting is somebody who is not actively looking? Because I've had friends in the past who are being taken advantage of at work, and basically are like, this is not worth it. I'm not being appreciated for all of the hard work that I've been putting into this company. And I'm actively looking for a job, but that takes time.
Yeah, it takes time, and I think that's the right strategy.
Yeah.
Is like, if you don't like your current thing, then like you have to put in work to find the next thing.
Yeah.
My issue is like with people who have almost, I feel like they've resolved themselves that the situation's not going to change, but they're not trying to change it themselves. And it's just like, now it feels like you're like miserable. And I don't think anyone wants to show up to work and feel like that.
Yeah.
You want to feel like you're being rewarded. So I'd really try to seek that out. I have a few red flags I want to throw your way.
Okay.
I know you're smiling because of my Minnesota accent on flags.
It's tough.
So this is like Kyle's list of things to watch out for that might mean you're being exploited.
Great.
Red flag number 1, act like an owner.
Oh, I hate that.
Act like an owner.
So bad.
Here's why you're being exploited. Are you an owner?
Yeah.
No, you're being paid a salary. You have no equity in the business. And so you working harder to quote unquote increase shareholder value, if you're not seeing any of that surplus value in the form of a bonus or in form of consistent compensation increases, buzzer, you're being taken advantage of.
Yep.
Like, you're working as an owner, but you're not rewarded as an owner. That is misaligned. You need to talk to your manager about that. What's your take on act like an owner?
No, I completely agree. And I actually will say, like, +1 for your big tech for like actually being really good at saying act like an owner and then like kind of putting their money where their mouth is. Yes. And so I think that's a really interesting, now, you know, there's stories of like the masseuse at Google that like got 5 shares and is now a multi-millionaire, which is amazing.
Right.
I love that they're doing that. And the reality is most companies are not providing equity to their low-level employees.
I think it's safe to assume for most cases equity goes to 0, but to me, at least they're putting their money where their mouth is. If I want you to act like an owner, I'm giving you upside in the business if it grows, or it doesn't need to be equity, but like, do you have a bonus at the end of the year that's variable based on how the company does? I think that's a great way to actually get people to feel like an owner and feel like, okay, I'm not being exploited.
I love that.
Do you have a red flag for us?
Oh gosh, a red flag that you're being taken advantage of. I think it's when the communication that you're getting from the team or the company is not aligned with the actions.
Okay.
So they're talking the talk, but not walking the walk. For example, if it's, you just need to work a little bit longer, a little bit harder, and then you'll get XYZ.
Yeah.
Or this company is about to grow. Like, you just need to like put in the time a little bit longer, and then it's going to, blow up.
Yep.
But that's not actually happening. There's a lot of like, oh, sorry, I know we promised that we were going to do this, but
yeah, it's like you're a rabbit on a treadmill, and there's a carrot, and you're like working really hard, and like you're going to get the carrot, but like if you're on the treadmill, you're never getting the carrot.
Yeah, you're like, just reach a little harder.
Yeah, so if you're seeing that consistently, 1 month, 2 months, 3 months, I think that's a great red flag. My other red flag is all about performance reviews. The meets expectations and the exceeds expectations. If there's no communication around, if you're meeting expectation, you're not going to get promoted. Like if they're at least telling you that, now you know.
Yeah.
If there's no conversation about what those mean for the future of your career and the future of your compensation at your company, you need to figure that out ASAP, because if they don't know, they're just not going to willy-nilly give you a raise or give you the promotion title. So I love companies that are a little more effective in talking about the bands, salary bands, how you get promoted. So look at your performance reviews. If there's not clarity around what those like qualifiers mean, you might be getting exploited.
Yeah, and also like if when you're having the performance review, your manager is like, you did fantastic. You were doing so great. Oh my gosh, I was so impressed. You did like such a good job on X, Y, and Z that went above and beyond. And then you get a meets expectations.
Yeah.
Something's off.
My other one is, I think, again, these aren't guarantees, but you might be getting exploited if they're like, we can only give a promotion to one person.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, is that in the Constitution? Where are companies finding this?
Yeah.
You could do anything you want. Like if someone is working really, really hard, but then and deserves a promotion, but someone else is also working hard and deserves a promotion, by saying you can only give one, like why is that? You can definitely give two, and I think at that point you're pitting people against each other, and you're probably telling them we can't give you a promotion either. Like you're using this like kind of tension between workers to your advantage.
Yeah.
That's like literally like maybe the definition of exploitation. And we don't have this like Chicago plant style one where like we're in solidarity.
Right.
So it's actually a really effective tactic for an employer, but you should definitely be watching out for that move as well.
I completely agree. Like, oh, there's only, 3 promotions we can give out this year. And it's like, okay, that might be true. Like you might have like constraints, like, whatever salary constraints or whatever.
Yeah.
But saying that as a way to be like, so prove your worth.
Yeah. So like it's
be the best.
There's 10 and only 3 of you are going to get it.
Yeah.
Like go fight amongst each other. Like that's such a toxic culture to be a part of. And I know you had that experience in banking.
Yeah, no, it's very like, a certain percentage of people are going to get X.
Yeah.
And you just have to like be that person. And when I was an intern, there was like 50% of interns got a job offer.
Yeah.
And it was very known that it was 1 out of every 2.
Hunger Games.
It was a Hunger Games. And I saw some like pretty toxic stuff. Like one girl once unplugged another person's computer when she was working on something, which I thought was so stupid because I'm like, don't things autosave? But whatever.
Yeah.
So there's like this toxic, and it pits people against each other.
Yeah. If your computer randomly starts turning off now, you'll know why.
It's you.
I do want to take a step back and almost do like a red flag for like employees.
Okay.
Because I think, we're talking about exploitation. At the end of the day, I sit down at a laptop and I press buttons on laptop in the right order.
Yeah.
And that's pretty much most of tech's job. And so like, I want everyone to like get what they deserve. But like at the end of the day, for some roles, I think, again, you should fight for everything you deserve, but having some context of like, you're not going to war.
Yeah.
You're not like having to like build tunnels underneath New York in the 1900s where like 50% of people were dying. Like that is real exploitation.
Yeah.
You work at Facebook, you have shares that are worth $1 million. Okay, maybe you're paid 10K less than you should be, but like your life is pretty good.
Yeah.
And so I just think, again, fight for what you deserve. And if someone's going to make the money, it might as well be you. But like, also like maybe cool it with the language, because there's situations that are like people are actually being taken advantage of.
Yeah.
And we should focus a lot of our time on fixing that as well.
Yeah, I agree. And I think, we only have a few rights in the US, but we do have rights. And I think you're totally right. Like, context is important, but also there's like real exploitation happening in offices that is like gnarly.
Yeah.
And in those situations, we're not talking about like, oh, you're underpaid a little bit, or like, oh, they're asking you to work at 6 p.m. on a Tuesday. Like that can be exploitation, but like the real exploitation of like really bad harassment and really awful stuff. Obviously, you have legal protections, and like I'm not an expert in that, but like look those up.
Yes.
So you have rights.
Yes, and then the other thing I'll say, which I think is tough for like employers and employees too, is like sometimes we can be pretty callous, or I can be pretty callous. Like, oh, just go find a new job.
Yeah,
it's not always that easy, and like we're in a system in America where like you kind of lose your health care if you leave your job, and like that's tough. And so like, obviously there's some other context that we are aware of when we're talking about this that I don't want to just gloss over as well.
Yeah, I think that's very true.
Okay. We've gone everywhere.
Yep.
All right, let's wrap this up for viewers at home. So let's maybe talk about like some, reframe, like signs you might being taken advantage of at work, and then any tactics you would offer to the audience on how to navigate that situation.
Yeah, I loved your red flags. I mean, I think, and I say it right. Your red flags are great, right? And keeping an eye for those.
Yeah.
And in terms of tactics, I think figuring out ways to get the insight of those red flags as early as possible. So having conversations with your manager about expectations, communicating with that manager exactly what you're doing, how you are potentially going above and beyond if you're doing that. Making sure that your boundaries are appropriately communicated. It's all about making sure that kind of everyone knows what's going on, both from your end and from your bosses and your team's end.
Yeah, I think that's spot on. And I feel like every episode, our best practice is like communicate with your manager.
Yeah.
But I really do think, myself included, sometimes we get really frustrated at work and we never like tell our manager. We just assume they're not going to care, or maybe you just don't have like a great relationship. But like, you really need to have a strong relationship with your manager and communicate these things. And so if I wanted to make sure I wasn't being exploited at work, I would figure out like, what do I want to achieve here?
Yeah.
What compensation do I want? And what am I comfortable doing to prove that over a set amount of time?
Love that.
And talk to your manager about that. And again, get them in like writing, or at least in a candid conversation, to be like, yes, that will get you promoted if you execute on X, Y, or Z. Then at least you know what the expectations are.
Yeah.
It's so easy to feel burned out. It's so easy to feel like you're exploited when you have no idea what the expectations are around promotion and you're just kind of guessing. It's a really uncomfortable spot to be in.
Yeah.
We don't want you to be there. So follow those tactics.
And if you do and you hate them, or if you have any big feelings, email us at permylastemail@morningbrew.com.
Smooth transition, Kayla. You're flowing us right into the credits. So should we roll them?
Let's roll them.
Our producer is Michaela Heck.
Our technical director is Lonnie Fiskus.
Abby Barron is our senior sponsor marketing manager.
And our chief content officer is Devin Emery.
This show is a production of Morning Brew. We're live from the most beautiful office in the world, and I'll see you next week.